Hello and welcome. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Gautam Roy, and coming up in the next hour, US, Qatari mediators and Hamas say a deal for the release of Israeli hostages is very close. Israel's Netanyahu says, hope there's a good news soon. BRICS holds an extraordinary meet over the Israel-Hamas conflict. India's foreign minister calls for addressing the concerns of Palestinians and presses for the release of hostages.
We believe that the concerns of the Palestinian people must be addressed in a serious and sustainable manner.
It's all set for the virtual G20 Summit on Wednesday. All G20 leaders, including the African Union chair, invited. Climate change and green energy among the top focuses. In India and Australia hold the 14th Foreign Ministers Framework Dialogue. India's Foreign Minister says the comprehensive strategic partnership has real momentum. The Israeli army is relentlessly pursuing the obliteration of the Hamas in Gaza, claiming to unearth an arms factory under a mosque on Wednesday while targeting the Hezbollah in Lebanon. But away from the fighting, hectic negotiations involving the US and Qatar over the release of Israeli hostages taken by the Hamas in the wake of the 7th of October attacks seem to be very close to bearing fruit. Take a look.
Efforts are also underway for release of hostages held by Hamas militants in the Gaza Strip. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expressed hope that there will be a good news soon.
We are currently focusing on a very strong and proactive defense in the north in order to achieve a crushing victory in the south. The first goal, the elimination of Hamas, does not stop until it is done. Second goal, the return of the hostages. We are making progress. I don't think it's worth saying too much, not at even this moment, but I hope there will be good news soon.
Earlier, White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby had said the United States believes a deal to release hostages held by Hamas amid the conflict with Israel is getting closer. On the other hand, in Gaza, Israeli forces claims to have discovered a factory that produced weapons and unmanned aerial vehicles under a mosque in Gaza City and released various video footages of October 7 attack. Earlier, India once again reiterated its stand at UN of achieving a just, peaceful and lasting solution to the Israel-Palestine issue through direct negotiations. India also opposed terrorism in all its forms and welcomed efforts for humanitarian pauses.
And India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar virtually addressed the extraordinary joint meeting of the BRICS on Tuesday. Dr. Jaishankar welcomed all efforts of the international community towards de-escalation in the Israel-Hamas conflict.
We welcome all efforts of the international community towards de-escalation. Right now, there is an urgent need to ensure that humanitarian aid and relief effectively and safely reach the population of Gaza. It is also imperative that all hostages are released.
And condemning terrorism, India's External Affairs Minister said that there should be no compromise in dealing with terror. He added that hostage-taking is equally unacceptable.
We are all aware that the immediate crisis was triggered by the terrorist attack of 7th October. Where terrorism itself is concerned, none of us should or can compromise with it. Hostage-taking is equally unacceptable and cannot be condoned.
And India's Foreign Minister also said that the concerns of the Palestinian people must be addressed in a serious and sustainable manner. This can only happen with a two-state solution.
We believe that the concerns of the Palestinian people must be addressed in a serious and sustainable manner. This can only happen with a two-state solution that is based on peaceful coexistence. We have been consistently supportive of international efforts towards this end.
And addressing the same meeting, Russian President Vladimir Putin called for a political solution to the Israel-Palestinian conflict. He said regional states and members of the BRICS group of countries could be involved in efforts to reach such a settlement.
We call for the joint efforts of the international community aimed at de-escalating the situation, a ceasefire and finding a political solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And the BRICS states and countries of the region could play a key role in this work.
India and Australia ties have real momentum, and they've really got to move on as well. These are some of the comments that have been made by India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, after holding the 14th Foreign Ministers Framework Dialogue with his Australian counterpart, Penny Wong. This meeting taking place on the back of the 2+2 Ministerial Dialogue, which was also held in Delhi on Monday. Here's more.
2 days of strategic and diplomatic exchange between India and Australia wrapping up on Tuesday with the 14th Foreign Ministers Framework Dialogue between India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and his Aussie counterpart Penny Wong.
Essentially, on the bilateral side, we took stock of where our ties are. We reviewed the progress made on different initiatives, especially the follow-up to the first annual summit, which took place between our prime ministers this year in May. There is, I can say without exaggeration, a real momentum in the India-Australia Comprehensive Strategic Partnership.
The second 2+2 dialogue was held the previous day between the defense and foreign ministers of the two countries. Dr. S. Jaishankar described it as being very productive.
Yesterday, Raksha Mantri ji and I held the second India-Australia 2+2 Foreign and Defense Ministers Dialogue. This, again, as you would be aware, is a format we have with select partners. It is reflective of the growing and deepening engagement between our two countries, and I must say it was a very productive 2+2.
While briefing the media jointly with Australia's Foreign Minister, India's External Affairs Minister also recalled how relations between India and Australia have rapidly expanded in recent years. He specifically mentioned the Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, which entered into force at the end of last year, saying its impact has been very positive. His Australian counterpart also highlighted multiple areas of cooperation between the two nations.
We are comprehensive strategic partners. We're also Quad partners. We share traditions. We also share an interest in the sort of region we live in, an Indo-Pacific that is peaceful, stable and prosperous, in which sovereignty is respected, and where all countries can benefit from a strategic equilibrium.
With the next Quad Summit set to be hosted by India early next year, India, Australia, US and Japan grouping was also discussed between the two ministers in the context of a stable, peaceful and rules-based Indo-Pacific. The day also saw the two Australian ministers meeting India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval to discuss global and regional developments as well as bilateral security and defence cooperation. Amritpal Singh, Delhi, DD India.
Let's take you back to the top, the story that we've been getting you about the Israel-Hamas conflict, where on one hand, BRICS leaders have met seeking the end of violence, condemning terrorism and the release of hostages as well. And at the same time, we're hearing of intense negotiations to get the hostages released, which involve the US, Qatar, the Hamas, of course, and Israel, may be bearing fruit. We're joined by Sarah Coates from Tel Aviv, and Amritpal Singh, my colleague from Delhi, is also joining me. First to you, Sarah. What's the latest on the hostage negotiations? What are you hearing from Israeli officials after what Netanyahu has said on the matter that there might be good news soon?
Well, look, he's just convened the War Cabinet. That meeting will happen in around 20 minutes' time. After that, there will be a Security Cabinet meeting. And following on from that, Netanyahu will sit with his cabinet. Now, what needs to happen is they will all discuss these terms that they are all, of course, privy to regarding this prisoner swap deal. They will then have to, the War Cabinet and the Security Cabinet, they will then have to all agree on this before it goes to the cabinet for a vote. Now, what we are aware of, what sources have leaked to the media, which may be in this deal, is that there would be 50 or so Israeli captives. They would be women and children, and they would be released in exchange for around 150 to 200 Palestinian prisoners, also women and minors being held in Israeli jails here. Now, it is believed this would be a 4-day ceasefire. We do understand that around 10 people would be released every day through the Rafah border crossing, that Egyptian crossing there, which goes into the Gaza Strip. And this would potentially give Hamas and other Palestinian factions inside the Gaza Strip more time to search for other captives, because we do understand that Hamas isn't holding all of these captives. It is understood that a number of other factions in the Strip do have some captives, and they just do not know where they are. So look, there would also potentially be a 6-hour pause every day in Israeli surveillance planes over the Gaza Strip, and this would be to give Hamas and to give these other Palestinian factions the freedom to be able to go and look for these people without being tracked by the Israeli military. So look, I'm sure we certainly will have more on this developing situation as the hours go by.
All right. What is the latest on the ground inside the Gaza Strip at the moment? Is the fighting as ferocious as before? Through the day, has it been that way? Or is the situation, or has it been relatively quieter so that the negotiations really bear fruit?
Well, look, extremely heavy fighting is continuing. We do know that the Jabalia refugee camp in the northern part of the Gaza Strip is completely surrounded by Israeli troops. They say that the military says that today it went on the outskirts of this refugee camp. It says that it blew up a number of tunnel entries. It also blew up a number of rocket launching sites and eliminated a number of Hamas commanders. Now, on top of this, it says that it hit 250 additional Hamas targets in the last 24 hours as this military campaign continues. But look, it is certainly coming at a heavy loss to the Israelis. So far, there have been 48. This has been, according to the Israeli military, 68 rather, Israeli deaths. So look, as long as this goes on for, that number is certainly expected to climb. But just very briefly, there's also a lot of tension on Israel's northern border with Hezbollah. There's been intensifying in cross-border strikes over the last 48 hours. You might remember this massive strike on an Israeli military base just yesterday. Well, early this morning, Hezbollah came out to claim that, although there were no fatalities in that incident.
Okay, if you could, Sarah, just stay with us. Let me bring in Amrit Pal as well. Amrit, what can you tell us about the kind of call given by India on the Israel-Hamas conflict during the BRICS meeting? How strong is it in terms of condemning terrorism and hostage-taking, along with coming down hard on the civilian deaths?
Gautam, India has always taken this position all along that what happened on the 7th of October, and that's what Dr. Jaishankar today in that virtual BRICS meeting which Cyril Ramaphosa had called, because South Africa is the chair of BRICS for this year. He said that what happened on the 7th of October was clearly terrorism. India clearly condemns terrorism in all its forms. But he also said that while that may be terrorism, but what is happening now to the civilians is of concern. The world must act. He called for humanitarian relief, unimpeded humanitarian relief. He said that the deaths of civilians is a cause of worry. So the world needs to look at that. And in the long term, the solution to the problem needs to be political. A two-state solution needs to be found out. But right now, the focus should be on what is happening inside the Gaza Strip, that is the continuous death of civilians, the evolving humanitarian crisis there, and how India India continues to shoulder its responsibility. He listed out that how India has provided, tons of aid to Palestine, which includes the medical aid. Saying that the world needs to, and even the BRICS as a forum needs to exert its political weight to end the hostilities there. He called for an immediate ceasefire there in Gaza.
All right. Now, what kind of weight will this sort of a call add to the already growing chorus for the release of the abductees and sparing of the lives of the civilians?
The world is divided. We know geopolitics plays out. And one thing I forgot to tell you, mention, Gautam, about the release of the hostages which Subramaniam Jaishankar called for. Yes, now, the world is divided, geopolitics plays out, Israel is not listening to anyone. It says that unless it achieves its military objective of decimating the Hamas, even as Netanyahu, before he called his war cabinet meeting, said the operations will go on, but you can hear some good news. So it looks like, despite the international pressure, despite the calls for a ceasefire, Israel is not ready for it yet. We'll have to see what the terms and conditions of that hostage release would be. As Sarah was saying, that could be probably exchange of prisoners, but Israel right now seems to be in no mood to relent to any international pressure on it for a ceasefire. Gautam.
All right, we'll have to wait and see what happens next. It has been said, I think, by officials that if things work out, we could see movement in a matter of hours. Sarah Coates and Amritpal Singh, thank you so much for joining us for the moment. And still to come on DD India News Hour, Russia says coexistence not possible with Ukraine's current regime. The White House says Presidents Biden and Xi Jinping had agreed to meet again after their San Francisco one-on-one. And the European Union lawmakers tell COP28 climate summit to take aim at fossil fuels. India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibilities. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday, 8 p.m. only on DD India. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. The UN Human Rights Office on Tuesday said that more than 10,000 civilians have been killed in Ukraine since the Russian invasion in February 2022. About half of the total deaths include civilian casualties. The human rights group expected the real toll to be significantly higher than the official tally. Here's more on the Russia-Ukraine war.
Russia on Tuesday said coexistence is not possible with Ukraine's current regime and it would resist the US-led NATO military alliance and defeat Ukrainian forces in special military operation.
Regarding the events in Ukraine, the events of the special military operation, it is about ensuring safety of Russia and Russian citizens from the Ukraine. The current regime that exists on the territory of Ukraine has proven to be completely toxic. We do not currently see any options to coexist with them.
Support for Ukraine continues from its Western allies. On Tuesday, Germany announced its another military aid package worth 1.3 billion euros. The aid will include an additional IRIS-T air defense unit.
In this package is included, of course, another 4 further systems of IRIS-T SLM. So we are altogether, it's a package of 1.3 billion euros. And I'm quite sure this is the fifth package since last winter. This will help you in your fight against the Russian aggression.
Earlier on Monday, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin had announced $100 million fresh military aid to Ukraine during his surprise visit to Kyiv and expressed American support for the long haul. Ukraine said its forces had crossed the Dnipro this month and established several bridgeheads on the eastern banks of the river. However, Russian defense minister claimed that Ukraine had failed to carry out a landing operation in the Kherson region.
Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping have agreed to meet again, but did not specify a date. The two leaders met in San Francisco last week on the sidelines of the APEC meet and agreed to re-establish military-to-military communications.
They agreed that they would meet again, but there was no date put on the calendar. What's really important now is that the military-to-military comms will begin to start, and even down to the theater commander level, and maybe even lower than that. So that's the immediate channels of communication that we're looking at getting back open.
The European Parliament called on Tuesday for a global deal at the UN COP28 climate summit to phase out fossil fuels, aiming to add pressure on countries to tackle carbon dioxide emitting oil and gas. The push by European Union lawmakers comes before nearly 200 countries meet to discuss stronger climate change action at the COP28 conference in Dubai, which is starting from the 30th of this month and will go on till the 12th of December. The EU Parliament, in a resolution, said the meeting should agree to a tangible phase-out of fossil fuels as soon as possible to keep 1.5 degrees Celsius within reach, including by halting all new investments in fossil fuel extraction. Countries agreed under the 2015 Paris Agreement to take action to stop the planet becoming more than 1.5 degrees Celsius hotter than in pre-industrial times, a limit that, if breached, would unleash far more disastrous extreme weather. And in news just coming in, South Korea has reported on Tuesday night that North Korea launched what they claim to be military reconnaissance satellite, citing the South Korean military. North Korea conducted a rocket launch believed to be carrying a satellite, South Korea and Japan said, in what would be Pyongyang's third attempt to place the satellite in orbit this year. South Korea's military said the rocket was believed to be carrying a spy satellite and was launched towards the south. North Korea had notified Japan it planned to launch a satellite between the 22nd of November and the 1st of December. North Korea had tried to launch what it said were spy satellites twice earlier this year, but failed. South Korean officials had said in recent days that it appeared North Korea would try again soon, perhaps with Russian help. UK and South Korea are set on deepening cooperation and launch negotiations on an upgraded free trade deal as the South Korean president begins his 3-day state visit. UK's King Charles was seen welcoming South Korea's Yoon Suk-yeol with a ceremonial parade. Now, along with talks on a new trade deal and a diplomatic accord, the two will also jointly enforce the sanctions by United Nations Security Council on North Korea. The agreement aims to support closer relations between Britain's Royal Navy and South Korean Navy to counter smuggling in the East China Sea. William Lai, who's leading the polls in the campaign to be Taiwan's president, has chosen a former diplomat as his running mate, Shi Bi-khim, who was in effect Taiwan's ambassador to the United States. DD India's Andrew Wood sent us this report from Hong Kong.
Well, Taiwan is a bit of leftover business from the Chinese Civil War of the 1940s. The communists won that and set up the People's Republic of China in Beijing. But the losing side, the previous government, fled to Taiwan and basically set up their own state-like entity there. Now, Beijing says that Taiwan is actually part of China, and it says it wants to unify China with Taiwan by force if necessary. The DPP that holds power at the moment in Taiwan basically says that Taiwan has a different culture, a different identity, and it basically is quite happy to stay separate from the mainland of China, although it tries not to use the word independence. and setting itself up as an independent state, because that really upsets Beijing. Now, Beijing has been showing its displeasure increasingly over the past year, with more and more military sorties, flights into Taiwan's airspace, naval vessels crossing the median line that separates Taiwanese waters from the mainland's waters in the Taiwan Strait. Now, if William Lai wins the election, then obviously that's going to help Taiwan stand alone against Beijing. It's not going to keep Beijing very happy. But the opposition parties in Taiwan at the moment, the KMT and the TPP, they were, a week or two ago, it looked like they were going to work together. They were going to try to avoid splitting the vote in the presidential election, so perhaps an opposition candidate could win. But now they seem to be going their separate ways again. So it's still looking like William Lai will win the election. He's certainly the front runner at the moment. In Hong Kong, I'm Andrew.
Now, India's Ministry of External Affairs has issued an advisory for Indian nationals based in Myanmar. In the advisory, it said, and I quote, "Registration of Indian nationals with Embassy of India, Yangon. All Indian nationals planning to live in Myanmar except short-term tourists are advised to register themselves with the Embassy of India, Yangon. Registration with the embassy will facilitate any measures that need to be taken in a situation of emergency or if such a need arises." Let's now take a look at some of the other updates from around the world as well. The International Telecommunication Union World Radio Communication Conference 2023 opened in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates to discuss orderly development of the sector with revised and reinforced regulations. More than 4,000 representatives from 193 member states of the ITU and relevant international organizations offered their visions and suggestions. The El Niño phenomenon and climate change are projected to bring heat waves and extreme weather to the southern hemisphere, with the possibility of record-breaking temperatures during the summer season. In Eastern Africa, the combination of the El Niño phenomenon and positive phase of the Indian Ocean dipole is expected to increase the likelihood of extreme rainfall events as well as floods. A Pakistani court on Tuesday declared the trial in jail of former Prime Minister Imran Khan illegal. A special court has been conducting the trial in prison, citing security concerns. The charges against Khan relate to a classified cable sent to Islamabad by Pakistan's ambassador in the United States last year, which Khan is accused of making public. The 21st of November marks a day of television every year. Announced by the United Nations General Assembly in 1996, the day celebrates the role of television in shaping world communication, impacting the reach of geo-televisual communication worldwide. And still to come on DD India News Hour, we'll be talking with our expert guest about the action points that will be taken up during the virtual G20 meet that India is hosting on the 22nd of November, which is tomorrow, towards the end of its G20 presidency. In the Uttarakhand tunnel collapse case, a major breakthrough has been achieved. Video communication has been established soon. Solid food will also be sent to the trapped 41 workers. And young talent looks to the future of movie making at the ongoing International Film Festival of India in Goa.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
Turning crisis into opportunity. Transforming ideas into action. Stories of real change. Tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell stories of such change makers.
Watch Changemakers on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy, and before we go any further, another look at our top stories. US, Qatari mediators and Hamas say a deal for the release of Israeli hostages is very close. Israel's Netanyahu says, hope there's good news soon. BRICS holds an extraordinary meet over the Israel-Hamas conflict. India's foreign minister calls for addressing the concern of Palestinians and presses for the release of hostages. And it's all set for the virtual G20 Summit meet on Wednesday. All G20 leaders, including the African Union chair, invited. Climate change and green energy to be the top focus. Curtains are coming down on India's G20 presidency at the end of the month. Before it passes on to Brazil, a virtual summit of the G20 leaders is being held on Wednesday, that's tomorrow, on the call given by India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Invitations have been extended to all G20 leaders and the African Union chair. The goal is to follow up on all action which was agreed in the Delhi Declaration in the September summit, with particular focus on climate change and green energy.
A virtual G20 leaders summit chaired by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be held on Wednesday. The summit was announced by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi during the closing session of the New Delhi G20 Summit in September 2023.
The Leaders Summit will be held tomorrow from 5:30 p.m. onwards under the chairmanship of the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. All of you are aware that the 18th G20 Leaders Summit was held in New Delhi successfully on 9th and 10th September 2023. It saw the unanimous adoption of the G20 New Delhi Leaders Declaration.
Throughout the G20 presidency, India has worked to ensure that the concerns of the Global South receive due cognizance. African Union has been included as a permanent member of G20. It may be recalled that the New Delhi G20 Summit witnessed the unanimous adoption of the G20 New Delhi Leaders Declaration. The virtual summit will take forward key select outcomes or action points from the New Delhi Summit, as well as review developments since then. The virtual G20 Summit is also expected to push for effective implementation of various G20 decisions, including through relevant national and international platforms.
Throughout the G20 presidency, India has worked to ensure that the concerns of Global South receive due cognizance. We've also seen the inclusion of African Union as a permanent member of G20. And the virtual summit will provide an opportunity not only to discuss the implementation of the Leaders' Declaration, but also for the leaders to share views and enhance cooperation on critical challenges that we confront and address gaps in global governance, reaffirm our existing commitment towards the Sustainable Development Goals, and move towards a reinvigorated multilateral system that is better positioned to positively impact people's life.
India holds the G20 presidency until 30th November 2023. The G20 troika during the Brazilian G20 presidency in 2024 will comprise India, Brazil and South Africa. Amritpal Singh's report for DD India.
And let me now take you across to our guest, J.S. Mukul, former Sherpa G20 and former senior diplomat as well. Good evening to you. Ambassador Mukul, what can you tell us about in terms of how you see this effort by India to ensure that whatever was agreed in the Delhi Declaration, even otherwise, where the G20 summit in September is concerned, gets acted upon, and there's a continuous, sort of a flow into the next G20 presidency as well?
Well, thank you and namaskar to DD viewers. No, I think this is quite significant, as it is the very first time that a presidency is hosting a second summit, albeit a follow-up summit in the virtual mode, but a second summit to follow up on the decisions. Now, what this tells me is that the continuing importance that India has attached to its G20 presidency right from the beginning, and we have made it a point that we would be active till the very end. The summit tomorrow, to my mind, is likely to discuss two sets of issues. One would obviously be, as has been mentioned, the follow-up or the effective implementation of the very rich menu of decisions that came out of the September regular G20 summit. Now that is important because it would provide an added impetus or momentum to the implementation of these decisions, which were very significant. The second area, which I think it is important for, is it provides another opportunity at the G20 forum for the world leaders to get together and address the developments and issues that have come up since September 2023 summit. Now, it may be only 2 months, but 2 months is a long period in geopolitics.
Correct.
And we have seen that a number of developments have taken place, starting with our own second Voice of the Global South Summit recently. Before that, of course, there was the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting. So these would feed into the virtual summit tomorrow. Also, the timing is important because the COP28 starts at the end of this month. And then, of course, there are the geopolitical or the geostrategic developments, the conflict in West Asia and the ongoing or continuing conflict in Ukraine. So I think there will be a whole lot of issues that will come up at this virtual summit tomorrow.
Yes, and there will be, I guess, a follow-up on the inclusion of the African Union as well, which was quite a huge step that was undertaken under India's G20 presidency.
No, absolutely. I think the African Union was anyway inducted at the very beginning of the September summit, so they had participated in the summit, and of course they will be participating as full or permanent members of the G20 in tomorrow's virtual meeting.
Okay, and in terms of what's been happening with the geopolitical situation, this Israel-Hamas conflict wasn't around when the summit had taken place, and that would, of course, figure very prominently because it has an impact which is worldwide, and there's been a growing chorus for ensuring that this violence ends, the hostages are released, and a solution. There's active effort to find a long-term solution, and India has very clearly said that it needs to be a two-state solution.
Yeah, I think we would need to recall that the G20 is the premier forum for international economic cooperation. So strictly speaking, geostrategic issues of the nature that is of the West, the problem or the conflict in West Asia, do not actually belong here. But then there is nothing can be seen in isolation. World leaders are, of course, free to raise any issues. They have the full discretion to raise all issues. And also the fact that these conflicts have implications, far-reaching economic, financial, etc. implications. So in that sense, yes, I do expect, while it's not for us to prejudge what would happen, but I do expect that the West Asia conflict would figure prominently at the virtual summit.
Yes, because the Russia-Ukraine one did in both the Bali and the Delhi declarations.
Absolutely. I mean,
and there was unanimity in Delhi.
Exactly. So while the Delhi, in the run-up to the Delhi summit, it figured in Bali and then right through our presidency, including what was decided was reflected in the finance ministers meeting, as I see what was decided in the September summit. So in that sense, there is a continuity, and ultimately the G20 is a process. So we would be handing this over. Of course, this is the fag end of our presidency, but I mean, these things would continue into the next Brazilian presidency, where we would continue to support them as part of the troika of India, Brazil, and South Africa.
Mm-hmm. Due to the proximity, there's a sense of urgency on doing more on the climate front because of the COP28 being just around the corner, starting at the end of this month, extending into December. What do you think the G20 leaders could possibly do to ensure that the Paris goal of sticking to 1.5 degrees Celsius of rise in temperature compared to pre-industrial times, we stick to it and do not get to a situation where we've had reports saying that what will ultimately happen is twice of that amount the temperature will rise in the given period?
No, absolutely. I think what the G20 summit does, it sends a very clear political message. It provides a political impetus at the leaders level of the most important countries. And that, of course, while it does not itself take the decision on COP28 issues, but I think the political impetus coming, and as you pointed out, so close to the COP28 would, I think, have an important bearing and would have to be factored into when the COP28 meets. And that is not just on the front of the larger goal, Paris goal of trying to keep the rise in temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius, but also on so many other important issues. The whole thing about the Green Development Pact, the mitigation and adaptation, finance and technology issues, particularly those of interest to the developing world or the global south. I think all these would figure. Of course, it remains to be seen how COP28 would address this, particularly the issue of resources. And how do you, while the political impetus is very clear, there are in the declaration, the summit declaration, clear ideas as to how the money has to be raised, or how the resources have to be mobilized from various specific decisions are there. But then ultimately we have to see, and I think it will have an important bearing on COP28, though not everything gets accepted in toto at these meetings, because those are different, larger forums and different forums. But I think the message or the political impetus coming from the leaders of the G20 will have a major bearing on that.
Well, certainly, and in that some responsibility was major responsibility, in fact, was given to the World Bank and institutions like those as well, where arranging for resources is concerned. And as far as the issues of the Global South are concerned, clearly there's still that issue of debt distress that a lot of these countries find themselves in. Do you think there will be further movement on those fronts as well, the issues of the Global South?
No, I think those are cross-cutting issues which are there. I mean, they have been there, they were there at the September summit, and they will continue to be there tomorrow. Development is the underlying theme, and that is the main interest of the Global South. There is the SDGs issues, there is the development finance issue, apart from, of course, the climate issues that we mentioned, and the debt, and so many other issues, the reform of multilateralism, starting with the multilateral development banks and the international financial institutions, and how will they be able to mobilize additional resources. So I think there is a whole lot. I mean, as has been mentioned, there are, I think, if I recall correctly, there are 80 plus paragraphs in the declaration, and there are almost 100 or more decisions or action points there. So I think there is plenty to look at. But I think we should also remember that the virtual summit, which may last for a few hours, will not be able to address each and every issue. It will address the most important key issues which have the most urgent and which are most important and also urgent in my view.
All right. Well, we'll find out tomorrow for sure. Thank you so much for joining us, Ambassador Mukul. Now, in the Uttarakhand tunnel collapse case, a major breakthrough has been achieved on Tuesday. Video communication has been established, and soon solid cooked food would also be sent down to the trapped workers. The Ministry of Road Transport and Highways of India also assured that all the workers would be brought out safe and sound very soon. Take a look at this report by Dibyendu Mondal.
Some good news came from the rescue operation of the Uttarkashi tunnel collapse on Tuesday morning. A 6-inch pipe has been successfully inserted. This will serve as a means to provide solid food to the trapped workers. This pipe also helped to establish a video communication with the trapped workers, providing much relief to the family members. The Ministry of Road Transport and Highways has also ensured enough food and water for the 41 trapped workers inside the tunnel. The ministry also apprised that electricity and enough oxygen is available inside the 2-kilometer-long tunnel.
Inside there is lighting also available. साथ ही एक 4 इंच का शुरू में 4 इंच का एक जो पाइप था वो भी अवेलेबल था right from the beginning because that did not break up, did not get destroyed. So we had a lifeline with the people inside through which initial rations, survival rations, जैसे अब फौज में होता है, survival rations were pushed through a compressor. Medicines, essential medicines, ऐसे क्लोज्ड एनवायरनमेंट में आमतौर पर विटामिन डी, विटामिन सी की खास जरूरत होती है. Efforts have been made to push in these items into that space, into the space where these 41 workers are at the moment existing.
The ministry, along with various organizations like the Border Road Organization, the State Disaster Relief Force, and the National Disaster Relief Force, the Army, and other agencies are carrying out multiple drilling at various locations to rescue the workers. From horizontal boring to vertical drilling and further to drift tunneling, every effort is being made to ensure the safe rescue of the trapped workers. Machines and manpower has been mobilized from across the country for faster operational success. The ministry has also roped in foreign tunneling experts from across the world to bring out the trapped workers safely.
Right now, जो internationally best possible 2 options आते हैं experts advice के, auger और ये right side की drift, उस पे सामने से काम चालू है और पीछे से horizontal जो टहरी THDC कर रही है वो काम चालू है. उसमें तो 35-40 दिन लग सकते हैं पर वो काम भी चालू है और लेफ्ट साइड से हॉरिजॉन्टल ड्रिफ्ट वो भी चालू है. और एक जरूर विश्वास है कि सारे लोग जीवित आएंगे, सुरक्षित आएंगे.
On 12th November, a collapse occurred in the under-construction tunnel from Silkyara to Barkot in the Uttarkashi district of Uttarakhand. Due to the debris falling in a 60-meter stretch of the Silkyara side, 41 workers were trapped inside this tunnel. They belonged from various parts of the country.
Drilling operations are underway with the coordination with various agencies from across the country. International agencies have also been roped in and called on to India and have been stationed in Uttarkashi to ensure the safe rescue of the 41 workers who have been trapped for the last 10 days. The ministry says that they are confident that good news is going to come soon. With camera person Yogesh, this is Dibyendu Mondal for DD India from New Delhi.
India's President Draupadi Murmu has graced the 15th annual convocation of Veer Surendra Sai University of Technology in Sambalpur in the Indian state of Odisha on Tuesday. Speaking on the occasion, President Murmu said that the development of the country depends on the contribution of the youth. She added that in the rapidly progressing world, skill and knowledge that they have acquired in the institution are going to be the bedrock upon which their future as well as the future of the nation will be built. Let's now get to a conversation that DD India's correspondent Jessica Taneja has had about Indian-Norway relations with Christian Carter, Director and Commercial Councillor for Norway to India at the Global Fisheries Conference being held in the western Indian city of Ahmedabad.
We have with us Christian Carter. He is the Director and Commercial Councillor for Norway in India. Christian, thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you.
Tell us about the relationship between Norway and India, how it has evolved over the years, and also talking about how we're looking at further cooperation, especially when it comes to fish export and import. Tell us about it.
So thank you first of all, and let me start by saying that ocean and the marine sector including is one of the most important components of the bilateral relationship between Norway and India. We have a very long-standing and strong cooperation in the fishery sector with India, dating back to the 1950s, where we did a very strong project in the state of Kerala. It has been developed through the years to other corporations, mainly sharing of expertise and know-how to other Indian states. Now we look at how we can cooperate in the aquaculture sector, and there we're looking at the whole value chain, basically from eggs to fish farming, including cage culture, fish feed, to processing, to logistics and exports, and also the branding of seafood, because we are one of the strongest seafood exporters in the world, and seafood exports are one of our most important export commodities.
Thank you for speaking to us, Christian, and taking our time and sharing those valuable insights.
And now we're turning focus to the International Film Festival of India. 75 Creative Minds of Tomorrow have spoken with India's Shama Mishra at the hub of global cinema, which is the International Film Festival of India in Goa. Let's listen in.
The 75 Creative Minds of Tomorrow, the challenge of the movie making has begun, and we are seeing that Team Pink is with us, and many other colors have also been selected. 75 great talent have already been selected. They'll be now moving into action to make their films. Let's try and talk to them. How do you view this initiative? How do you see the competition?
This is a great opportunity for us, also meeting people from all over the country. A lot of influx of culture. I'm getting ideas from different minds and their set of ideas and creating our own thing. So really nice initiative.
It was really huge and like a proud moment for me to like come across an opportunity and see that the Indian government is making an effort for the Indian filmmakers and the independent voices and giving them a platform. So I'm super excited.
I think the Ministry of Information Broadcasting has done an amazing initiative. And as a director, it's very challenging to do it in the 48 hours. So we are a team who never knew each other before, and we're coming up and a lot of challenges ahead, and it's really amazing.
Mission Life is something what is promoted by India, not just at this particular level, but at G20 and at several other levels. India is promoting for sustainable development. India is promoting for Mission Life, and bringing that to Creative Minds of Tomorrow is something really great. And these people, these youth, this young talent can actually enhance that and bring it to life, to showcase it to the entire world. With camera person Sanjeev Sharma, this is Shama Mishra for DD India, Panji, Goa.
And jury member for cinematography Priya Seth at the IFFI 2023 has talked about the versatility of the talent pool with DD India's Shama Mishra.
Priya Seth is with us, and she's also known for her recent release, Pipa, the war film. Hi ma'am, welcome to DD India. What was the process like, when the entries came in? What did you all look into? And how were these people who've been selected right now came to this point?
It's actually a very, very interesting process, this whole... I had no idea that this even existed, which is what I was telling them right now. And to have, kids and adults from all over the country send in their submissions, it's nice to see that there is so much self-expression. And the good part, and this is something I said in my workshop as well, that with cameras getting smaller and it getting easier, a lot more people are being able to tell stories, which is why there's so much diversity in the talent pool now. So it's very exciting because different people from different parts of the country have different stories to tell. And that will always help our narrative, pool in the country, the kind of movies we make, because you're going to get so much diversity. So I think this is a very important venture, the 75 Creative Minds of Tomorrow, because it's going to be invaluable going forward.
Okay. And still to come on DD India News are... Blow to Sri Lankan cricket, ICC takes away its right to host the upcoming Under-19 World Cup after its suspension. And the best in global television were honored in New York at the 2023 International Emmy Awards.
Turning crisis into opportunity. Transforming ideas into action. Stories of real change. Tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell stories of such change makers.
Watch Change Makers on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. The fourth tranche of earthquake relief support of essential medical supplies reached Nepal and was handed over to the government of Nepal. The support, comprising vital medicines and equipment, is based on the need shared by the Nepal Medical Association. Till now, India has provided over 34 tons of emergency relief materials for the affected families in Nepal following the earthquake which took place in Jajarkot and surrounding areas on the 3rd of this month. Highlighting its sustained commitment to green energy initiatives, the United Arab Emirates continues to demonstrate progress in solar-powered green hydrogen production. The pioneering Green Hydrogen Project, a collaborative initiative with DEWA, Expo 2020 Dubai and Siemens Energy, marks a significant milestone at the Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Solar Park. As the nation embraces the net zero goal by 2050 initiative, this landmark project underscores the UAE's commitment to combating climate change and driving global efforts towards a greener future.
We split the water, the oxygen only emission we release to the atmosphere, and in the night time the only emissions we have is the water. So it's zero carbon, zero CO2 emissions.
And now time to get you some sporting updates as well. The International Cricket Council board met today and confirmed the terms of the suspension of Sri Lanka cricket. After hearing representation from the SLC, the ICC board decided that Sri Lanka can continue to compete internationally both in bilateral cricket and ICC events after being suspended recently for breaching its obligations as a member, in particular the requirement to manage its affairs autonomously and without government interference. However, funding to SLC will be controlled by the ICC, and the ICC board confirmed Sri Lanka will no longer host the ICC Under-19 Men's Cricket World Cup 2024, which will now be held in South Africa. And the best in global television were honored in New York at the 2023 International Emmy Awards. German show The Empress was awarded Best Drama Series. Carla Souza bagged the Best Actress Award for the Mexican sports drama Dive, beating Indian actor Shefali Shah. Martin Freeman won Best Actor for his role in the drama The Responder. India took home 2 awards. Comedian actor Veer Das won Best Comedy Series for his Netflix special Veer Das Landing, and Ekta Kapoor received the International Emmy Directorate Award. Indian-American author Deepak Chopra presented the awards. And that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news and updates as they break here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.